welcome to the show. In our Galway Under Siege series, we've been hearing how the COVID pandemic is having a devastating impact on businesses here in the city. But it's not all bad news. Some enterprises have found themselves very much in demand because of the products or services they're providing. Well, one initiative that's expanding because of the virus is Galway-based Acquila Bioscience. They've been developing a wipe that removes toxic substances from surfaces, including the skin. Its founder and director is using his background in biology and biochemistry to develop simple yet innovative solutions for healthcare issues.
We have been working on a product, on a technology for almost 5-6 years, which is to remove pathogens from surfaces without causing any toxicity or harm to the surfaces. And then the coronavirus crisis came upon us, which is a global major crisis for all of us. And we realized that our technology could potentially act as a tool to protect lives, to save people, to reduce transmission of virus in this time of crisis. So what we have developed is a material that acts like a Velcro, and it binds to pathogens and removes them very safely, effectively from surfaces without causing any harm to the surfaces.
So you have an example of it there. It's like a wipe, a Lokesh, is it?
Yeah. So basically, this is what it is in its form right now, and it's like it's almost like a small towel, which is impregnated with our chemistry and natural molecules. And those molecules create the Velcro-like surface. If you look under a microscope, it is like a very fine, there's lots of fine hooks there. And they go and they bind to the pathogens and then strip them off our surfaces. I think one of the great things about this is it's totally biocompatible. So anything that kills germs also affects our surfaces. So repeated use can cause allergy, dry skin, a lot of other issues on our skin, but this is very safe. It's made up of very, very safe materials. So one can use this to clean one's face, one's eyes, nose, mouth, especially those areas, because those are the portals of coronavirus entry to our lungs. So that's why it's a bit like a wipe, but it can be used in different formats as well.
Acquila Bioscience was originally funded by the European Defence Agency in 2014. It wanted to see how soldiers could be protected in situations where they could be exposed to dangerous biological agents. The company was funded to develop a material to protect soldiers operating under those conditions. Acquila Bioscience worked with the Irish Defence Forces as the end users and the Defence University of the Czech Republic because they have the labs that can test harmful pathogens that couldn't be tested in Ireland.
Our lab developed the material, the chemistry. We tested them here on less pathogenic, less harmful bacteria that we can test and viruses. And then we shipped the technology to Czech Republic in their defense lab. And they tested them on what we call category A pathogens, such as anthrax, tularemia, clostridium, as well as viruses. So we tested them on H1N1 swine fever or swine flu pandemic. And we tested them on biological toxins, such as botulinum toxin and ricin. And the idea was that soldiers or frontline users could carry these wipes or this technology in their pockets. And if they're exposed to a material like that, they can wipe their eyes and their face, but also they can bring the samples back to the lab for forensic analysis.
Lokesh showed me how the wipes might help to remove the coronavirus from surfaces such as hands and faces.
I have a model here. So this supposedly is I don't know, million-fold expanded model of virus. And the way all pathogens, whether they are bacteria, they're viruses, the way they attach to our cells is that they have sugars and proteins on the surface. And they attach to our cells through the sugars and proteins. That is the first mechanism before they can cause infection. If they can't attach, they can't cause infection, right? So this mechanism, which uses specific sugars and proteins, so coronavirus also has the protein, these are the sugars, and when it lands on our surface, it finds the right match and it attaches like a Velcro, And then it just stays there for a while until it finds its path to our lungs, to either mouth, nose, eyes, etc. So it's really that interaction between the sugars and proteins that's very important to anchor it. So what our wipes do is that they attach on top of this and strip them off, right? And the reason we have shown this to work on a lot of bacteria and viruses is our material, the wipe that we have, has these hooks that can bind to all bacteria, viruses, and fungi. So we know that it can strip them off the surfaces.
What's interesting about these wipes is that they don't actually kill the toxic substances they remove from surfaces. And that philosophy of creating non-destructive technologies has been central to Acquila Bioscience's procedures.
I guess being a biologist, you learn to respect biology as well. And you learn to respect that in nature, all organisms exist. And the best way to exist is a mutual respect for each other, as opposed to try to eliminate one or the other species or organism. That's one thing. The second is that the European Defence Agency was very keen to develop what they call a non-destructive technology. So the samples could be brought back to the lab for identification and forensic analysis, whereas every other mechanism right now destroys the sample. So going back to our first principle of do no harm, is protecting the people, but also not causing havoc on the pathogen, is that we have to learn to realize that we're not the only species on this planet. There are several other species and they all have right to exist. And they've been there for hundreds of millions of years before we even came on this earth. And in fact, the planet belongs to them. We are guests, so we have to respect them. But also, viruses and bacteria, or any species, the more you try to put pressure on them, the more you try to eliminate them, there's resistance there. And that resistance can lead to antibiotic-resistant bacteria or other mutations. So any mechanism you use to kill them will eventually fail. So the idea is that if you respectfully remove them without killing them, then there's no room for mutation or resistance there.
There's been huge interest in Acquila Bioscience's product since the crisis developed. They've now released a pilot product that they're supplying to the Irish Defence Forces working on the COVID frontlines. And they're receiving requests from other government and non-government agencies, as well as care homes for the elderly. I asked Lokesh how he felt our fast-paced, globalised lifestyles were contributing to the development of deadly viruses such as COVID-19.
In nature, all species, all cells mutate. Most of the mutations either are harmless or they in fact destroy the organism or the cell. But some mutations give them advantage to survive, thrive, and reproduce better. Now, my thinking is that process of mutation takes place all the time. However, because of our actions of high-density living, literally destroying the biodiversity, living in very close proximity with wild animals, climate change, all of those are playing a role in almost accelerating the rate of mutation, as well as exposing us to those organisms as well. So there is a danger that as we kind of race along blindly, that we are again creating these waves of changes in the ecosystem around us. And that comes back to us. Everything is interactive. So there are many reasons. So my hope would be, I guess, as a human being, as a citizen, that we will reflect on the way our societies are kind of running at a very fast-paced life, and think about our actions and how they impact everything else around us. Because who would have thought that a very primitive organism that is not even a living cell could come and really challenge every nation and bring the society to a grinding halt. So that's the lesson to us.
How do you think, if we take it on board the proper way, it'll change our lives potentially and the way we live them in the future?
It's a loaded question, Karen. I think a sense of reflection, and a sense of simplifying our needs. I know that's not a very scientific answer, but respecting nature and living almost in harmony with nature and appreciating what we have and not destroying things around us is very important. I think going back to what you were saying about other sanitizers and hand cleaners and all those things, almost all of them contain toxic chemicals. And not only that they are harmful to our skin, they in fact cause other diseases, other reactions that you end up taking other medicines for those things. They're not safe for older people, not safe for sensitive skin, they're not safe for children, but also most of them use non-recyclable material. That's causing environmental havoc as well. So we have focused on biodegradable wipes. FDA, for example, has come up with a paper where they are putting restrictions on most of the chemicals that are used right now in hand sanitizers and wipes. And it's primarily because they cause harm to the environment and to the people.
And that was Lokesh Joshi, the founder and director of Acquila Bioscience based in Galway.